Hello YouTube and welcome back. This is Nico and you're watching Dare to Game. Today we're playing Kingdom Come Deliverance and we're going to be doing a little bit of a different guide today. This one is going to be the 5 worst, lowest damage axes in Kingdom Come Deliverance. So instead of looking at ones that we really like, we're going to be looking at ones that you should probably avoid because they suck. So we're going to start it off with number 5. So for number 5 you can see we have the Bardiche or Bardiche or however you pronounce that. And it has a damage of 30. So this is the 5th worst one and it's not terrible yet. This isn't too terrible. Only worth about 82 groschen. If we look at the description, it says, a traditional tool that can also be used for combat. Compared to a sword, the axe has greater impact and is thus suited to the dealing with heavily armored opponents, but it's heavier and therefore slower. And above all, doesn't give much cover, especially if the axe was originally intended for work and doesn't have a metal-plated handle. So not all that great. Only has a durability of 32, so that's pretty low. Low charisma, since it's, kind of a crappy little weapon. But yeah, so that is the 5th worst one. So let's take a look at it on the wheel. So as you can see in this lovely close-up shot, it is a pretty rough-looking weapon. We've got, kind of a curvy hatchet-looking handle with a little, cushioned grip on the middle, which I guess would be good. It's got sort of a flat front on the blade, so it wouldn't be as good for slashing as it would for chopping. When you use an axe and you want it for slashing, it's better to have a slight curvature on it, because that way it's easier to bring across in the slashing motion. Whereas this one has a point on the top, which would make it good for short jabs. And, yeah, but otherwise, other than that, it's just got the flat front, so it's clearly just a chopping or bashing weapon. But, not too terrible. So let's move on to number 4. So at number 4, we have this big old brute of an axe, the Carpenter's Axe. You can see it's got quite the big bit on it. Let's look at the info. Oh, before we do that, it has a damage of 28, so making it 2 points less than the previous one, and a value of 52, making it actually worth less than the last one. This one has the exact same description, so I won't just read it again. Basically, blah, blah, blah. Not as good at blocking, a little bit better at bashing, etc., etc. The durability is 27, so even lower than the last one. Charisma, again, is only 5. You can see the damage stats there. Not all that great of a weapon, but let's look at it on the wheel. So here on the wheel, we can see this one, unlike the last one, has, a straighter shaft. It's, basically just perfectly straight, or as perfectly straight as it can get. A much larger bit than the last one. And this one has I think it's called a long beard. I think that's what this style of head is called. But this one would be slightly better for slashing attacks since it does have a bit of curvature and it's angled slightly down, so bringing this across an unarmored opponent would deal more damage. It's got a slight point on the top, so it wouldn't be terrible for jabs, but again, this is more of a hacking weapon, which, should be expected from axes. But let's move on to number 3. Alright, so for number 3, we have a Cooper's Axe, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a barrel maker. A Cooper is a person who makes barrels. So I guess this axe would be for someone who makes barrels. It has a damage of 26, so again we're dropping another 2 points in damage from the last one, and a price point of only 32, so these are getting pretty cheap. Same description, durability of 23, so the durability again is going down. So, these are getting pretty dang fragile. But let's take a look at it on the wheel. So here on the wheel we can see it has, again, like the last axe, we can see that straight shaft. On this one we've got some leather binding up top. Again, a pretty rough looking blade, not very uniform. It is a little bit similar to the last one in a lot of ways, except being smaller. It does have it's an angled down blade and has slight curvature, so it would be, again, a little bit better than the Bardiche for slashing. Not much of a point, so we're starting to lose some effectiveness in those quick jab attacks. Again, primarily a hacking weapon. I do like the style of this one. I think it looks a lot like Ragnar Lothbrok's axe from Vikings. I think this one probably looks the most like it. But with all that in mind, let's move on to number 2. So at number 2, we've got this wily little weasel, the Woodcutters Axe. Like most axes. This one has a damage of 24, so dropping another 2 points, and a price point of 23, so getting even cheaper. And if you look at it here, this is the only place you can see it. It's got this little loop, a little leather thong at the end, which I guess would be for wrapping around your wrist, but considering how you hold this axe, I don't know if that would be all that useful. So maybe it's for, like, tying it to things like your horse's saddle or something. I don't know. Description, again, is the same. Durability of 20, so moving down even more. Charisma on this one is even a point lower, so this one's 4, so that's not great, but let's look at it on the wheel. So here on the wheel, we can see this one looks a lot like the last one, at least as far as the handle and the wrapping goes, because that's basically identical. Once we get to the bit on the top, though, it's slightly different. This one has even more curve to it and no tip at the top, so this one would not be very good for jabs, but it does have a much sharper tip at the bottom, so I guess if you were doing downwards, you know, pull attacks, I guess it would be decent for piercing things. But with the smaller, lighter bit on the top, this one I assume would have less effectiveness in hack attacks, you know, a hacking style attack, because you're losing a lot of that blunt force from the weight of the other axes. But with that in mind, this isn't the worst axe, but let's look at the worst axe. So for the worst axe, we have this one, labeled simply the Axe. This one has a damage of 22 and a price point of 12, making it the least valuable and the worst as far as damage goes in all of the axes. You can see it has a charisma of 3, dropping another point, and a durability of only 15. So this thing is essentially useless. You know, I would say it's better than punching your enemy, but not much. So let's take a look at it on the wheel. So here on the wheel, we can see this is more what I would call a camp axe, or maybe even a hatchet. It's got that curved style handle, which I guess gives you a little bit of mechanical advantage. But with all that in mind, it's got a really small bit on the top. Seems to be single piece forged with the, you know, the bit coming right out of the top of where it mounts to the handle. Very small, basically straight out, so we're not great for slash attacks, even though it has a slight curvature. There's no point on the top, so it's not great for stabs. And due to the curvature and the point on the bottom being, you know, a little bit close to it, I would say that that point on the bottom isn't all that useful for combat. So overall, this axe is, you know, obviously the stats already said that it was the worst, but just an analysis of the functionality of it, you know, by looks of it, I would say that this one is not suited for combat. You better stick to decapitating chickens with this one, otherwise you're just going to get killed. But with all that in mind, that's the end of this one, so now you know the 5 axes in the game that you should probably avoid unless you have no other option. Hope you liked it, but I'll see you next time. Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. If you did, I can assume you liked the content, and hopefully you'll subscribe and turn on the notification bell. If you haven't already, check out these links I have on the screen to see me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you like my content and would like to support what I do here, there's a link to my Patreon account in the description, and a donation would be much appreciated. In any case, thanks for watching, and have a nice day.